Hello and welcome to Library with Miss Pulliam. I am Miss Pulliam and I'm glad you're here. Last week we read the Losers Club, which all my students have enjoyed. And I know you, as well as I, have been looking forward to seeing what's going to happen next. So we read chapters 1 through 3 last week, and we are going to read chapters 4, 5, and 6. And then after, I have a short story with a little lesson, which is it's cute. Okay, we're going to get started. Here we go. This chapter 4, it's called Rules. Alec got to the gym at exactly 6 minutes after 3. He checked in at the table by the door, then walked halfway down the west wall of the huge room. He flopped onto a pile of exercise mats behind the bleachers and opened up the High King again. Almost 20 minutes later, a voice interrupted his story. Again. "Excuse me, you're Alec, right?" He sat up quickly. "Yes, Alec Spencer." It was the woman who had taken his name at the door, looking down at him through narrow glasses with brown plastic frames. She had short blonde hair and small gold earrings shaped like cats. A dangly bracelet hung from the wrist of the same hand that had rings on it. And Alec, oops, why am I showing you this? There's nothing to see. And all right. And Alec, what's going on here? Couldn't help noticing that her fingers were long and thin, finishing off with bright red nail polish, which immediately made him remember the warden in the book Holes. The lady who ran a boys' prison camp out in the desert. She said, "Did you get the student information booklet about extended day? About our program choices?" "Yes," he said, "it's at home, except I didn't get a chance to look at it." The woman said, "I see. Well, I'm Mrs. Case, the program director, and you have three different options. You can sign up for the activities games program or the clubs program, or you can report to the homework room each afternoon." Mrs. Case tried to smile as she talked to him, but Alec could tell she was annoyed that he hadn't known all this beforehand. "So, those are your choices," she said. Alec said, "But can't I just sit here and read?" Mrs. Case shook her head. "You need to be enrolled in one of the three activities I mentioned: clubs, games, or homework. Now, if that book is a school assignment, then you should be in room 407, the homework room." Alex said, "This book, it's just for fun, and I've already read it 4 times." He smiled, but Mrs. Case didn't smile back. She looked over the top of her glasses at him. "But you do have homework, don't you?" He nodded. "Oh, yeah, tons." "So you could go to the homework room and work on that." "Well," he said slowly, "I could, but I'm going to do all that later at home because it's homework. Get it? Homework." Alec was still smiling, and Mrs. Case still wasn't. "As it also explains in your information booklet, students have these first 2 days to decide which of these activities to start out with. If you don't want to be in the homework room, you could ask Mr. Jensen or his assistants about active games. Or you could talk to Mr. Wilner. He's in charge of the clubs program, and he could tell you all about that." Mrs. Case looked at Alec for a moment and then gave him a real smile. "The games can be a lot of fun, and if you don't see a club you like, you can always start one of your own. Extended day is actually a great place to spend time with kids your age. Kids you might never get to know during the regular school year. But whatever you choose to do, you can't just lay down over here on the gym mats by yourself, all right? So have a nice afternoon, and if you have any other questions, I'll be happy to answer them." And with that, Mrs. Case turned and walked back toward her command center at the main door of the gym. She was wearing a dark blue pantsuit, which made her look sort of like a police officer, except she also wore orange and white running shoes, which was not like a police officer. Alec noticed the shoes because they squeaked on the shiny wood floor. The big clock above the main door was inside a heavy wire cage to protect it from stray basketballs, and he could see that it was almost 3:30. In the corner off to the right of the doorway, It looked like a game of kickball was starting up, but Alec didn't want to play active games for the next 2.5 hours. He'd gotten plenty of exercise hurrying from class to class all day. So he tucked his book into his backpack and headed toward the club's area. 5 cafeteria tables had been set up along the rear wall, each about 15 feet from the next, and a tall man wearing a blue sweater was helping some kids unload plastic bins from a storage closet in the corner. There was a small hand-lettered sign on each table: Chess Club, Robotics Club, Chinese Club, Lego Club, and Origami Club. Alec didn't really want to be in a club either, and he really didn't want to start one. To have to get an activity organized and then keep it going day after day, that sounded horrible. Because right now, today, all he wanted to do was read. Alec glanced back to see if Mrs. Case was watching him. She wasn't. So he hurried toward the table with the most kids, which was the Lego Club. 3 boys and 3 girls. The tallest boy was lifting trays of Lego parts out of a large bin and handing them to the other kids. Alec didn't know any of them. He was pretty sure they were all 5th graders. When he reached the table, he smiled at everyone and said, "Mind if I sit here and read? I won't bother anybody." The tall boy shrugged and said, "No problem." And most of the other kids nodded. Then one of the girls said, "But if you want to join the club, you have to get onto Mr. Wilner's list." "Right, I'll remember that." Alec glanced across the gym once more to check on Mrs. Case. All clear. He quickly moved around to the back side of the table, slid onto the seat across from the big plastic bin, and hunched down behind it, nicely hidden. Then he took out the High King and started to read once more. The story lifted him up and carried him away, just like it always did, and he forgot all about the squeak, squeak, squeak of Mrs. Case's running shoes. Even though he knew this book as well as he knew his own backyard, he still loved every character, still loved every twist and turn of the plot. And after a day like this one, it felt amazingly wonderful to know exactly what was going to happen next. Chapter 5 is called Simple. It was still the first day of school, still the same never-ending Tuesday afternoon. At around 5:15, Alec felt a tap on his shoulder. He shrugged away from the touch and kept reading, furiously munching the last bits of Luke's granola bar. Taryn, his favorite character in The High King, was about to be rescued, and then came the battle in another tap. "Sorry to interrupt," said a voice, "but I need to talk with you." Alec pulled his eyes from the page and looked up, and then looked up further. It was the tall man, Mr. Wilner, the one in charge of the clubs. "Oh, hi," Alec said. "Sorry." "Could you step over this way?" The man pointed toward a small table next to the storage closet. Alec got up from the Lego table and followed him, looking back across the gym as he went. He didn't see Mrs. Case. "Am I in trouble?" "No, not really. Mrs. Case just texted me and said you shouldn't be at a club table if you're not participating in the activity. I asked the kids if I could sit there and read, and they said they didn't mind, and I didn't bother them. At least I don't think I did." Mr. Wilner said, "Why don't you go to the homework room? I know you can read in there." "Yeah, except Mrs. Case says that's only okay if it's homework reading. But I want to do my homework at home at night. Right now, I just want to read." "So you didn't spot a club you'd like to join?" Alex shook his head. "No. Robotics is really fun stuff. Do you like math and science?" Alex shook his head again, but he felt bad. The guy was trying hard to be friendly. He wanted to be friendly back, so Alex said, "But you put together a really nice bunch of clubs." Mr. Wilner smiled. "Thanks, but I didn't set them up. The kids picked out their own interests." As Alex heard that, what Mrs. Case had said earlier about starting a club clicked back into his mind. "So, would it be hard to start a reading club?" "Oh, good idea, huh? You want to read? Start a reading club. I like it." "Not at all." Mr. Wilner reached over and pulled a piece of paper from a folder on his table and handed it to Alec. "That's a club application form. All you have to do is get one other kid to sign up with you, and you can start your own club." "Really?" said Alec. "Really." Alec took a quick look at the form. "This is great. Mr. Wilner got out his phone, opened a text window, and spoke the words out loud as he tapped. Hi, Mrs. Case. I talked with Alec, and I'm helping him find a place in the club's program. He tapped the screen, and his phone made a swoosh sound. There. Now the director knows you're working with me. Thanks, Alec said. Mr. Wilner's phone made a loud ding, a reply. He looked at the screen. Mrs. Case says, good. Just be sure Alec knows that if he hasn't found an activity by 6 o'clock tomorrow, then I'll have to choose one for him. Mr. Wilner put his phone back in his pocket. So there it is. You've got till 6 o'clock tomorrow. Alex said, but all I need is one other kid, right? Yes, said Mr. Wilner. One other kid. He paused, then said, however, the program director has final approval for any new clubs. You mean Mrs. Case? Alec asked. That's right, he said, Mrs. Case. Chapter 6. The Wrong Kid. I just need to find one other kid before 6 o'clock tomorrow. As Mr. Wilner walked over to help at the robotics table, Alec looked at the clock again. It was only 5:30, so he had some time right now. He sat down on the floor and read the club application form. One sentence stood out to him. Any student attending extended day may join any club at any time. So if he got a new club started, he could end up at a table loaded with kids, and a bunch of kids usually meant a bunch of talking and goofing around. Lots of interruptions, which wouldn't make reading impossible, just more difficult, like trying to read in the same room with his little brother. It would be great to keep the club small, and the best, a total membership of 2, but how? How could he keep kids away from something as awesome as a reading club? Then Alex smiled. The answer seemed obvious. Instead of calling it a reading club, he was going to call it something else. On the application form, he filled out the name and the purpose of the club. And at the bottom, he signed his name on it, on one of the 2 lines labeled Founding Members. Then Alex stood up, and for the first time, he took a careful look at the other extended day kids. He estimated that there were between 40 and 50 boys and girls in the gym, all 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. Alec was able to pick out a few 6th graders he knew, but no one he would really call a friend. The truth was, Alec had spent much more time with books during the past 5 years than he'd spent hanging around with other kids. A burst of cheering at the kickball area pulled Alec's attention to the far corner, and there, just rounding third base and charging for home plate, he saw Kent Blair. Remember Kent? Three extra hours every day in the same room with Kent? Not good. True, the gym was a big, very big room, but Kent had a way of taking more than his share of everything. While Alec was grumbling to himself about Kent, he spotted someone else, Dave Hampton, back along the wall beyond the kickball diamond. Dave lived just around the corner from him, and, like Kent, he had been a friend starting all the way back in preschool. When they were little, Alec and Kent and Dave had played together a lot. They had even gone to a swimming camp one summer, splashing around a pool every afternoon for 2 weeks. The difference between Kent and Dave was still a nice guy. Alec walked across the gym to the games corner. At first he thought he might have to wait for a break in the action to get a chance to talk with Dave, but then he saw there wasn't a real game going on. It was more like a kickball exhibition, with Kent as the main attraction. Every time he booted a big kick, 3 or 4 girls would jump up and clap and yell, "Yay! Go, Kent, go!" Girls seemed interested in everything Kent did, something Alec had noticed before. Dave walked toward the drinking fountain, and Alec hurried over and pulled him aside. "Hey, Dave, how's it going?" Dave smiled, surprised. "Hi, I didn't know you were in extended day." "Yeah, I just started this year," Alec said. "So listen, I've got an idea." He held out the application and said, "How about the 2 of us start a new club? We have to get it going in a hurry, like today, because we've only got till, 6 o'clock? Tomorrow to get enrolled in an activity. All you have to do is sign down there next to my name." As Dave took the application, a hand reached over his shoulder and snatched the paper away. It was Kent. "Hey, look at this." Me and Alec and Dave hanging out just like the old days. So, what are we doing here, guys? He took a quick look at the application, and a big grin spread across his face. Ken handed the application back to Dave. Don't let me interrupt. Go ahead, Alec. Tell Dave here all about your exciting new club. It only took Dave a moment to read the application. He looked at Alec and shook his head. I don't know if this is for me. It sounds kind of stupid, said Kent. Is that the word you're looking for? Because it does sound totally stupid. And Alex here, he must think that you're stupid enough to want to help him start a club for losers. Ah, here we go. And the name of the book is Losers Club. Alex smiled at Dave, ignoring Kent. He said, I know it sounds sort of stupid, but it's supposed to. That's the whole point. And if we don't start a club of our own, then after tomorrow we'll have to join something like chess club or robotics club, or else play indoor kickball until we get completely nuts. Kent stuck out his chin. Hey, guess what, Alec? Me and Dave, we're all signed up with Active Games. We like playing kickball, and we're really good at it. And Dave's not gonna be part of starting some club for losers. That's right, right, Dave? Dave's face was red, and he seemed tongue-tied. He was stuck in the middle of an argument between Alec and Kent, just like dozens of times before. Alec talked directly to Kent now. It's not a club for losers. It's just called the Losers Club, so that nobody else will want to join, because that means Dave and I can have our own table over in a corner somewhere and do whatever we want. Look, said Kent, everybody knows that what you're actually going to do is sit around every afternoon and read. So the name of your dumb club doesn't matter at all. It's just going to be a hangout for Alec, the bookworm. Alec's eyes narrowed. It was the second time today Kent had thrown that word at him, and he felt a rush of anger, and then a sharp gust of memory. At his 8th birthday party, one of his presents had been a new book. He'd torn off the wrapping, and then he sat down and read that book for 40 minutes, right in the middle of his own party. When he suddenly realized that the party was almost over, he ran out into the backyard, and Kent had kicked a soccer ball to him and called out, Hey, look who's back! It's Alec the Bookworm! The other guys had laughed, and they picked up on the name. Hey, Bookworm, welcome back to your party! Did you have fun in Wormland? Squish that ball over here, Bookworm. Kent was the first kid who had ever called him a bookworm, and the label had followed him to school. Alec had heard it a lot, especially from Kent. Did he deserve the nickname? Sure he did, and Alec understood that. He really did love to read, so being called a bookworm almost felt like an honor, and most of the time it didn't bother him at all. But the way Kent said it, that was different. Alex still hoped that Dave would think for himself and like the idea, so he kept on explaining. But really, Dave, the name of the club does matter. If the club has an ordinary name, then other kids will probably try to join. And Ken interrupted, you don't want to be bothered by other kids because all you really want to do is sit around all afternoon and be a bookworm, like I said. Almost yelling, Alex said, I don't have to read all the time. I mean, Dave and I could talk or play some board games. We could do all kinds of stuff. Yeah, Kent smirked, like total losers. Wow, you've got Dave in a really tough spot here, Alec. Is he going to play some epic kickball games, or is he going to join the losers parade over in Wormsville? Kent turned and walked away, and over his shoulder he said, I'll be at home plate, choosing a fantastic team. He's a sweetie, isn't he? Dave's face was still red. He shrugged and he tried to smile, but he couldn't. He handed the sheet back. I think I'd rather do the active game stuff. Sorry, Alec. Then he hurried away to catch up with Kent. For the final 15 minutes of extended day, as the girls cheered for Kent, Alex slid back into hiding at the Lego table, and he didn't care whether Mrs. Case saw him there or not. He tried to pick up where he had stopped reading, but he couldn't get into it, because every few minutes he heard Kent's voice echoing inside his head. Bookworm, bookworm. Okay, let's see where we're at here. Okay, that was 3 chapters. Let me see where we are on chapter 7. So we're going to stop here. So we read 4, 5, and 6. And I don't know about you, but I'm enjoying this book still. It's getting good. While I still have you, let's first do stretching. We need to stretch, my friends. Oh, I was looking for this bookmark. Here it is. I'll put it in the book instead of this. Okay. I'm going to read you something else, which is kind of cute with a lesson. But first, let's go ahead and stretch. Arms up. Oh, that feels good. Arms up to the ceiling and down to your shoulders. Arms back. Bring in front and back. Up and down. Up and down. Oh, that feels good. It's relaxing. So stretching is a new big thing for me. And I hope that you will stretch too, and you just need a few minutes to get you going. Another important thing, my friends, while we're at it, I know when I sit down at my desk, I just want to eat. I don't know about you guys, but I always want to like snack. So I try to make myself prepare something quick and easy, but healthy. So today I've got this big bowl here, and it's full of grapes and blueberries. I like blueberries. Mm. They're kind of tart though. It's like, woohoo! So anyway, if you're gonna be snacking, make sure you're drinking your water, which I am. I have a little bit of I've got water here with a drop of Crystal Light or that kind of thing in it to give it flavor. So let's keep healthy. All right, we have a few more minutes. The book that I read today to the other kids, the younger ones, I thought I'd read to you guys too because it's just cute, okay? And it's called The Bad Seed. And this is the book that has the lesson today for this week. All right, so I'll read it kind of quickly. I don't have to go over the vocabulary words for the 3rd through 5th graders because you guys know these words. All right, so we're going to get started. I think you'll enjoy this book, especially the pictures and things. I'm a bad seed. A bad seed. Oh, yeah, it's true. The other seeds, they look at me and they say, that seed is so bad. When they think I'm not listening, they mumble. There goes that bad seed. But I can hear them. I have good hearing for a seed. How bad am I? You really want to know? I believe we do want to know, don't we? Let's find out. Okay, well, I never put things back where they belong. I'm late to everything. And I tell long jokes with no punchlines. I never wash my hands or my feet. I lie about pointless stuff. And I cut in line every time. What do you think of his behavior? Would you want to be friends with somebody who acted like this? I didn't think so. I stare at everybody, and I glare at everybody. I finish everybody's sentences, and I never listen. And I do lots of other bad things too. You know why? Because I'm a bad seed. And here he is at the library playing music. A bad seed. And there we go. I just can't help it. Sure, I wasn't always this bad. I was born a humble seed on a simple sunflower in an unremarkable field. I had a big family, seeds everywhere. We found ways of having fun. We were very close. Okay, so here we go. See his family. Maybe this will explain to us what happened to make him be so grumpy. But then the petals dropped and our flower drooped. As the flower drooped, what's happening to him and his family? They fell. It's kind of a blur. I remember a bag, and that's fresh sunflower seeds bag. So they got raked up, He remembers being in a bag. Everything went dark. And then, so you can see his eyes. You can't see him too well because it's so dark in the bag. All right, check this out. A giant. See the giant at the baseball game? To him, he's this big. That is a giant. Okay, so he's about to eat him, isn't he? I thought I was a goner. I thought I was done for. I screamed and I hollered, ah! And but I was spit out at the last possible second. Whew. He lucked out, didn't he? I flew through the air and I landed under the bleachers with a huge thud. When I woke up, it was dark outside, and a wad of gum had softened my fall. I felt okay, but something had changed in me. I'd become a different seed entirely. I'd become a bad seed. A bad seed. That's right. I stopped smiling. I kept to myself. I drifted. I was friend to nobody and bad to everybody. I was lost on purpose. I lived inside a soda can, and I didn't care. It suited me. You see him living in his little soda can. Let me see. There he is right there. Until recently, I've made a big decision. I've decided I don't want to be a bad seed anymore. I'm ready to be happy. It's hard to be good when you're so used to being bad, but I'm trying. I'm taking it one day at a time. Sure, I still forget to listen sometimes, and I still show up late, and I still talk during movies, and I do all kinds of other bad stuff. But I also say thank you, and I say please, and I smile, and I hold doors open for people. Not always, but sometimes. And even though I still feel bad, sometimes I also feel kind of good. It's sort of a mix. All I can do is keep trying and keep thinking, maybe I'm not such a bad seed after all. Hey, look, there goes that bad seed. Actually, he's not that bad anymore. He's not all that bad anymore, said somebody else. And there he is, and he says, I heard that. And he's smiling because he heard that, and that made him feel good, didn't it? This is a story that I read to K2, and I still like to read it with everybody just to talk about the lesson in it. The bad seed does some bad things, but we learn that some bad things happen to him. He learns that we all have the power to change. So we all have the power to change, and that we don't have to be defined or known by what happened to us. That's pretty powerful, isn't it? It is good stuff. Something to think about, my friends. And that's The Bad Seed. There are two other books by Jory John is the author, and there are two other books in this series that I'm going to read the next 2 weeks with everybody. All right, let's stretch a little bit more. Okay, I've had your attention now for almost 30 minutes. So I'm going to let you go in just a second so that you guys can take a break before you get back to your classes. Remember, before I leave you, my friends, that you got this under control and that change is okay. We can do this. We're all in this together. Also, if your parents will send me a picture of you working from home or doing something from home, you could even be playing, I will put it in the school newsletter. So you can tell your parents to email lpulliam, so it's LPULLIAM at winthropcharter.org. And I will be happy to put you in our newsletter. that everybody gets to see. All right, I shall leave you now with 2 words. Keep reading. See you soon. Have a wonderful day, my friends.